Hey, what's up everyone? It's your girl Brain Shanae. Today I'll be doing a book review for Spare by Prince Harry. This book recently came out on January the 10th, which was on a Tuesday, and let's go ahead and get into it. So within this book, there are three parts. The first part is talking about his as a boy, his life as a boy in the palace, with his family, with his dad and his mother. So we're talking about the beginning stages of his life. And then in the second part, he discusses stuff as when he's in the army and stuff, and all his things in between his life of, when it comes to his drug use and stuff like that, and the tabloids and the paparazzis. And in the third book, we still deal with the paparazzi and the tabloids, but now he brings up Meghan and how they first meet and how their marriage and stuff goes from then on into the present. So in the first part of the book, I felt for Harry because he talks about how he is known as a spare, and people will jokingly call him as a spare because technically he's a spare of the heir, which is, his brother is the heir to the throne. So they would jokingly call him the spare. And I feel like with just that alone, with siblings, it brings up rivalry. And I feel like Harry wasn't trying to be a rival or anything like that, but then when William, if you think about William and how much pressure he is being placed on his shoulders, and he's looking at his brother who has some type of leeway, he's not as restricted as him, there is some type of resentment that is brewing, and it continues to brew for a lot of years. So you have that animosity towards the two brothers, and just with that animosity, then you end up losing your mom, which is, I can't imagine losing my mom. That is the most devastating thing that could ever, in your life, one of the most devastating things that could happen in your life as a kid. And I felt for them, because they love their mom deeply. Harry loved his mom deeply, cherished her, looked up on her, just loved her, admired everything that she had done. And just for how his dad, came up to him and told him that his mother was gone, it's like he never gave them that moment to mourn and grieve over the loss of their mother. Because literally after the funeral, it was just back to normal. Everyone was back to normal, like nothing ever happened. So Harry created this narrative in his head that his mom was never really gone, that she just finally escaped. She finally left the monarchy. She finally got her freedom that she wanted. So that was the narrative he put in his head. I feel like that was his coping mechanism. And literally at his mother's funeral, he only cried once, and after that became numb, because he had created that narrative in his head that his mother was still alive. It's just that she escaped, and then one day she will finally come back and get them. And I think later on in his life, he figured that that was not the case, and his mom was really gone. And so as his mother is gone, but then you also deal with his father and how his father was treating Harry, jokingly saying that he's not really his son, he's his mother's lover's son, because he has some similarities and he has the red hair or whatever. But Harry then breaks down, everybody knows that I'm really his son and stuff like that. But still, as a joke, I feel like his dad, he made it seem like a joke, but I think his dad still felt like Harry wasn't his son, in a sense, in my opinion. So we go through that in the first stages of the book. But then also we talk about how he brings up how when his aunt passed away, and they bring up a huge diamond, which it made me feel some type of way, because the diamond they're talking about, it's called the Great Diamond of the World. It's 105 carat monster, diamond called the Koh-i-Noor. Hopefully I'm saying that. Koh-i-Noor, sorry. And its origin is India. And, he literally says stolen, some thought. And in my sense, I'm like, bro, it was stolen. I don't know why you just put in that stolen, some thought. Yes, that was stolen, even though it says acquired by the British Army as its zenith. So, which means it was stolen. But anyways, it is what it is. Just point blank period, say it's stolen. I still felt like within this book, he was still trying to protect his family, which I get it. He loves his family, but it's like, bro, your family just excommunicated you, literally took everything from you, and you're still trying to protect them, which is fine. I feel like as just a regular person, you're going to be going through that. You're going to be dealing with that. But anyways, we even talk about, even on the early stages, they bring up the Zulus and stuff, and how the English army conquered them and they received rewards. And I felt some type of way about that too, about how the monarchy literally has destroyed, like literally has impacted the world with the Atlantic slave trade. But that's never brought up, of course, which is fine. But that's when I feel like with later on this book towards the end, I felt like there should have been some growth from Harry, but we didn't see that. Even in the book, it says, the men who fought on this ground, Mr. Retro said, were heroes. On both sides, heroes. The Zulus were ferocious, utter wizards with a short spear, known as the Ikwa, which was named for the sucking sound it made when pulled from a victim's chest. And yet a mere 150 British soldiers on hand managed to hold off 4,000 Zulus and their improbable stand, called Rook's Drift, instantly became part of British mythology. 11 soldiers were awarded the Victoria Cross, the greatest number ever won in one battle by a single regiment. Another 2 soldiers who held off the Zulus one day before Rorke's Drift became the first to win the Victoria Cross. And so he brings up the Zulus, and I'm like, I feel like this was something you shouldn't bring up, because if you're not going to fully talk about what your family has done in the monarchy itself, as far as the slave trade and the different countries that they are still in power of and still affect till this day, like, I don't know why he brought that up, but you know, it is what it is. This is his story, so it's like I can't really judge him on that. This is his story. This is something he wants to say to the world, which is fine. But I still think that with him saying stuff and acknowledging that, he needs to acknowledge the full picture, but he didn't do that. But anyways, in the second part, he talks about how he was in the army. He was able to finally fly this like helicopter called the Apache, which is something that only a few people in the world can actually fly. So, I found that interesting. That was knowledgeable. But he also talks about his other side of him prior to that, which was his drug use, prior to him being in the army, which I thought that, okay, finally he's, I felt like with this book alone, he's putting himself out there. He's becoming more vulnerable to the world in a sense, but yet he's not really saying much that we would want him to. He's still protecting his family, and the monarchy as a whole. But he talks about a lot about his drug use and what the tabloids had said about him, and how he was a drug addict and stuff like that. But at the same time, he was living his best life in a sense. He was traveling, he was going to different pubs. He talks about loss of his virginity. It talks about a lot of things in his life. I find it very interesting, especially in the last part of the book about how he met Megan. But even prior to that, and before he went into the army, and then after he loses his mother, we end up getting to now be introduced to Camilla, which is now his father's wife, which him and his brother asked his father never to remarry. He's like, you can have your mistress, but please do not remarry. Just don't do that. There's no point in remarrying. But he did so anyway. And I was wondering how he even got the permission to do that, because Camilla is a divorcee, and I guess that's looked down upon or whatever. So, but anyway, he was able to do so. The queen gave him the permission to do so. And she was just shady. She know what she was doing. She was scheming. You just know what she was doing. But it's like, I don't know. I feel like he was still giving her a pass in a sense. Just a tad. Maybe a whole lot. I don't know. Like, let me know down in the comments if you read this book. Let me know how you feel about it. But Camilla knew what she was doing. And I still felt like Harry was like, you know what, I'm just going to accept her. I love her. I don't consider her an evil stepmother. She's Camilla. She's my stepmother. And he moved on. But even with that, he was still getting terrible treatment from his brother. His brother would tell him like, well, I'm the heir, you need to listen to me and stuff, or do this. Like, there was a whole incident about his beard and how it needed to be shaved, and his brother was like, well, no, you need to do what I tell you to do. And I'm like, you're not even the king yet, so why are you demanding me to do this? Like, you have no power over me. You're not the king. I don't gotta listen to you. You just my brother. But it seems like his brother had this intuition, like, I can boss around my little brother regardless. And so he thought that he had this power, but Harry didn't let that slide. Harry just brushed him aside with all that. But anyways, where was I? There's a lot to unpack in this book, but I'm just going to give you my 2 cents on how I felt about it, and just a little key stuff in it. I'm not trying to be spoilery there, but it is what it is. I'm gonna let y'all know how I feel about it. Now, Harry has been in the army and stuff like that, and him and his brother talk now and then or whatsoever. But then later, Harry is trying to figure out where does he belong. He's still trying to figure not only himself out but his role. So he'll know he's still travel to Botswana and all the other different countries for his charities and stuff like that. So he's trying to find his individuality away from the monarchy, away from his family, away from his brother, which I do like. I like that he's trying to find himself, especially with the monarchy trying to tell him like who he needs to be or whatever, which he does in a sense do that because in the family there was a certain person who would go to the army, and so that's what Harry did. He went to the army and stuff, and he fought for his country. And so after he does that and he's thinking like about long term, like about marriage and stuff like that, his brother, well, not his brother didn't tell him, the family announced that his brother was getting married, and Harry did not know not one thing about it, which it lets you know how their relationship, their brother relationship is. They don't really talk that much, or they do, but his brother doesn't say much to him or leaves things out because he doesn't want his brother to know everything. So he gets announced that his brother is going to be married, and so this is around November 2020. And so literally it says news to me, all that time together, and less so, he never mentioned it. The papers published florid stories about the moment I realized Willie and Kate were well matched. The moment I appreciated the depth of their love and thus decided to gift Willie, which this I did not understand, to gift Willie the ring I inherited from Mummy. The legendary sapphire, a tender moment between brothers, a bonding moment for all three of us, and absolute rubbish. None of it ever happened. I never gave Willie that ring because it wasn't mine to give. He already had it. He'd asked for it after Mummy died, and I've been more than happy to let it go. So I was saying to myself, why are you giving him your mom's ring? Like, he treats you like shit. But it is what it is. Maybe. And then I was talking to my husband about it. I'm like, maybe at that moment he's like, this is my peace offering for us to come together and start to be brothers again, start to have a bond. And maybe for me, like at that moment I would soften my heart. I wouldn't be so petty. I can be petty, but maybe at that time I wouldn't be, because I'm looking at it like, this is a big moment for my brother. I'm going to do this for him because he asked for it. So he does end up giving, the ring to him for his wife to be. But I was telling my husband, I was like, I don't think I would ever do that. If my brother treated me this way my whole life, and I end up giving the ring that I was inherited, that was my mother's, that I love dearly, but my husband made me realize that maybe Harry didn't really care much about the ring. He just loved his mother, and so it was only a materialistic thing. So I also appreciate that perspective that my husband provided for me, regardless when it comes to this moment of what Harry did of gifting William his mother's ring. But I just found it interesting, and I think that was like sort of, like I said, an olive branch to him so they could continue on trying to have a better relationship with one another. But that doesn't seem to happen, and that wasn't the case. So Harry was still also, as his brother now is married, and next thing you know, the tabloids are saying, oh, how does it feel to and to no longer be the third or fourth in line or whatever, because his brother started having kids. And he's like, I don't care. I never wanted to be king in the first place. But I feel like the tabloids in the UK are more extreme than they are here in the US, which I have never been to the UK, so I would have no clue. I have no knowledge about that. I'm only looking in from outside, so I honestly don't know. But anyways, as we go on, we get into the third part of when he meets Meghan. And I thought it was a beautiful story of how they meet. But I was thinking about how, did they ever have a discussion about her, she's black. But then again, he mentions in the interview how she looked white. So I didn't think there'd be anything of it. And I'm like, bro, are you kidding me? She's black. But then again, Meghan, I don't think identifies herself, like she knows she's Black because her mother is, but from what I've seen, you know, what I've read and stuff, and in this book itself, throughout high school, Megan was living with her father, which is white. So I feel like, especially during high school, that's when your mind, you know, you start to develop your own thoughts and stuff about your own identity and who you are and who you want to be. So it seems like there was no type of talk about what would happen if, you know, if their relationship went any further, which there wasn't. Not that I've read in this book. So there was a time where they end up, you know, he asked for his grandmother's blessing and to marry Megan, and she's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, sure. And he's like, seriously, just like that? She's like, yeah, you love her, right? He's like, yeah. And he felt that his grandmother probably would question it because she's divorced and that's looked down upon. But then again, he thought he would get a pass because his dad married Camilla, which is also a divorcee. So, and it wasn't even mostly about her being Black, which that was never mentioned either. It was mostly just because he loves her, and you know, and he was mostly concerned about her being divorced and that he probably couldn't marry her. It was nothing about her being Black. And then as they get married, there is a controversy with Megan and Kate about the bridesmaids' dresses. And then there was a miscommunication with her. And, you know, Megan starts crying because that's not what she wanted Kate to feel. And, you know, Kate felt like, that's inappropriate. You shouldn't be mentioning my hormones. You're not part of the family just yet. And so I think Megan was starting to feel it, but not yet until after they got married. And then after they started having kids. And that's when Harry said, why there's like all this racism. And I'm thinking in my head, why would you be surprised of that? Because she is Black. But then again, he even mentioned in an interview that he was naive about it. And when I think about the quote that he first says in this book, which it made me think about this whole book itself. And it says, this is by William Faulkner. The past is never dead. It's not even past. So when he said he was surprised about all the stuff about the racism that was occurring, I'm thinking like, why? Racism is still living. Racism still exists and it is still manifesting. It's never going to go away. So why would you be surprised that the tabloids would say this or call your wife a chimpanzee or your son a chimpanzee, the mother of you know? I don't understand that part. But then again, like I said, I don't think they had the discussion of her like being Black, because in the interview he says like she doesn't look Black. So I think there was no type of education. He didn't educate himself. And then Megan, I don't know. I don't know much about Megan. I hope that she does write a book, maybe, I don't know. So that way I would get her perspective. There's always two sides to a story. And I do appreciate that he had wrote this book or whatever. But I also want to hear her side as well, because I know she was the person that was constantly being attacked because she was Black. Like, how did she feel? And I think that was also what was lacking in this book as well, because yes, he told a story, but there was no type of emotion. He never really explained how he felt about it all. Like, he felt like, did he feel sad? Did he feel miserable? Like during like the last parts of the book, he did feel for his wife and was concerned about her safety, and he wants to protect her. But then again, you can't really protect her because you don't know how to protect yourself. So it was just, I don't know. I don't know what I expected, but I thought I would expect a little bit more by this, because I'm like, bro, do you know who your family is? Do you know what the monarchy did to the world as far as the slave trade? Do you not get that about the racism part as well? Like, you can't be that naive. But then again, I've met people that live in small towns in Ohio that I met when I was in college, and they weren't educated at all about it. So, you know, and then I'm thinking to myself, maybe he is that naive. But I'm thinking to myself, like, towards the end of this book, possibly I would see some type of growth from him, and I didn't. But then again, it might take him some time, because he's still, the thing is, it's a privilege. It's a privilege to not be concerned about that. And you know, Megan had the privilege too, and I feel like, I don't know if they're going to educate themselves, or at least Harry educate themselves regarding the situation of guarding about the root of racism and how it was originated, how it was created. So I don't know. And that's the one thing, that's another thing that I felt that was lacking, was his growth and him having learning a lesson about, about everything, like about the death of his mother. And I thought that maybe after what had happened to his mother, he would finally, I would think he would look at it as like, you know what, this is, I got to protect her in some form. But then again, or educate myself on what needs to be done. So I'm thinking like maybe he was in this book. Yeah, he gave us some information, but a lot of this is some things that we already know. And I was expecting some things that maybe here's something that he wants to do in order to shed light on the issues, and to shed light on the issues within the monarchy itself. Like he brings up, like within this book, he even talks about the wasp and the bee, like the bee. He has particular people that he talks about, but gives them code names within this book. And I really wanted to know who they were, because it literally says, I spent my life dealing with courtiers, scores of them, but now I dealt mostly with just 3, all middle-aged white men who'd managed to consolidate power through a series of bold Machiavellian maneuvers. They had normal names, exceedingly British names, but they sort more easily into zoological categories: the bee, the fly, and the wasp. And so the bee pretty much was the overhead of everything. They would pretty much go over every single thing. And at that time when Harry and Meghan said they had enough and they wanted to step down from their duties, they didn't want to step down from the family, just from their duties for a little bit, and they would live in Canada. That's when the bee was like, well, maybe we need to take, they were giving them options at one point. You can have option 3, option 5, or whatever, where you get this. And then option 5 is where you get this, but we take away your security. And so Harry felt like, okay, we'll take this option. But next thing you know, the bee switches it up. And so they lose their security eventually. And that's when they had to eventually get out. And at first they were like, oh, we need to go to Canada before the border closes, because during that time, that's when COVID and that's when the pandemic was occurring. So they had no choice. But that's when Tyler Perry steps in, and he has them fly to his estate. And that's where he's able to have the security that they need to get to where they need to go, but also get the protection, because his family took that protection away from them. And next thing you know, they took away everything, stripped him of everything, all his finances, everything. And I felt like with that in this book, like even towards the end, he would say something, anything. But I felt like maybe like in the next book that he writes, we will see more growth from him. But I don't know. I have a lot of emotions about this book after still gathering my thoughts and putting together every bit and pieces of every single page of this book, and trying to figure out, like, has Harry grown yet? And I feel like he's still there, because he's still healing from his trauma. He's still healing from the death of his mother, to the trauma from his family, the trauma that he got when he was in the army. I think he still is in that time where he is healing, but I'm like, bro, you need to wake up. You can't keep, no. But then again, that's where privilege comes into play. And so, like I said, I just want more growth. I want to see more growth, and I didn't get that. And that's what made me really disappointed and had my emotions all over the place, because I was mad, then I was sad, then I was just furious about this, because I was like, bro, you still haven't learned not one damn thing. And yet in interviews you say that the monarchy needs to acknowledge their role. And I'm thinking to myself, well, you are still part of that family, so you can also acknowledge it on your behalf. You don't got to speak for your family if you don't want to, but you need to speak on your behalf what you and your family has done. And I know you do charities and stuff, but I think that you're trying to get around from the main issue. Because even in the book, like I said, he only mentions enslavement once in this right here. So it says, let me see. So it says, literally after they pretty much strip him of everything, it says, everything I'd been taught, everything I'd grown up believing about the family and about the monarchy, about its essential fairness, its job of uniting rather than dividing, was being undermined, called into question. Was it all fake? Was it all just a show? Because if we couldn't stand up for one another, rally around our newest member, our first biracial member, then what were we really? Was that a true constitutional monarchy? Was that a real family? Isn't defending each other the first rule of every family? And I'm thinking to myself, bro, they're your family, but then again, you got to think about their family's history, their code. Like, they will cut you off in a heartbeat. So for you to question that, you definitely are ignorant. And like I said, he's privileged. He says he's privileged in this, but I still think he's not getting it. Or maybe he gets it, but he doesn't want to say it, or he's scared to say it. I honestly don't know. But yeah, I just think that eventually there'll be a wake-up call. And I think he's woken up, but I think, like I said, there's still some growth, and he still needs to learn some things. Overall, I would never rate this book because it is a memoir. This is from his point of view. This is his story to tell. I can never rate somebody's story. That's just not what I do for memoirs. But I don't know. Like I said, my emotions is still all over the place after finishing this book. Overall, I think that with this book, Harry is still holding back. I feel like this was one of the moments that he could have pretty much just went all out and said what he had to say. He's still censoring himself with his words, which I get. He's been censored his whole life, where, you know, he had to choose his words wisely. But I feel like you are now in the US, and I feel like you have some type of power. You're using your voice, using your platform, and saying what you have to say. Say names, why, instead of giving them code names like the bee, the wasp, and stuff like that. Say who they are, out them. Like, I feel like this is the time to do so. And then I feel like when he even mentioned in the beginning of the book with the quote with William Faulkner, the past is never dead, it's not even past. You need to get out of that cycle, because yes, you said you don't want to repeat the past, but yet and still the cycle hasn't been broken, because your family has been known to also kick out people in your family, and they pretty much done that with you, and the cycle obviously is still repeating itself, and nothing has changed. You are still part of that cycle. So what are you going to do? What is your next move? That's what I wanted to, that's what one of the main thing I wanted from this book, because you have I feel like now that you are out, the family doesn't, they kicked you out or whatever, they took away your security and stuff. I feel like you now have that freedom to say what needs to be said about who did this and who said that, instead of you giving us code names. And I really want you to look deep down into your past, because the past is past and it's still within the future. The past is still manifesting today in the present, and he really needs to dig deep into the root of his family, because they are the royal family that has caused a lot of trauma, slavery. They have been detrimental to many generations, and are still being detrimental to this day. So much trauma. And yes, he has also gone through trauma himself, but he has the power. I feel like he has the power to do something, to use his voice. I feel like I said, he was out. Princess Diana, his mother, she was still trying to find her way out of it, and yet now she's gone. And I feel like this is his opportunity. This is his moment. And for this book, I feel like he lost his moment because he was holding back. And I feel like you can tell as you are reading this, as I was reading this, like he was holding back. I felt like he wanted to say these names. I felt like he wanted to be deeper and stop being so, I don't know, it didn't, it's like just reading words off of a page. I didn't really feel the emotion about how he felt and how he was feeling at that time, which why, like, hence why he's holding back. He still held back. But I've heard that there's going to be some other books, like some other books that he has in store for us. I've heard, but I'm not sure if that's true or not. But I really want to see some growth from him. I know that he's still in therapy and stuff with him and his wife and still trying to protect his family. But yes, you need to protect your family, which then again, like I said, if you can't protect yourself, how can you protect your family? And he needs to look back into the past of his family and the harm that they have caused, and to figure out what he can do on his end. Yes, he's been kicked out, but he still has a voice that he can use. He still has a platform. His mother, if you think about it, just her presence alone, she was iconic. People loved her. And I feel like, I know there's a lot of conspiracies, but I feel like those are one of the main reasons why she's no longer with us. I know they said it was a car accident, but I feel like there's more to that story that the family or the firm or the B or whatever wants us to know. And I feel like he could have that power if he knows how to use it, and if he knows he has that power. I feel like he doesn't. I still feel like he thinks that he is still in a cage and he can no longer speak. He has to be censored. But I hope that eventually he will figure it out and he will grow from this. He will have a better understanding of this and the opportunity that he has now, which was a little bit of a disappointment to me, because I thought I was going to get a little bit more from him, but it's like I said, it was lacking in things, not acknowledging things about what his family has done, and to provide us what is his plans now. He's now in the US. What are your plans now? Because you still see this problem. Your family is still part of this problem. So what are you going to do next? Yes, you're not in the UK, you're not with your family anymore, but you're here. You still have some type of power. Use your words, use your voice. You love to advocate for people. Now is the time to say something about the harm and hurt your family has caused. So that's all I have to say about this book. Like I said, I'm not going to rate this book because it's his memoir and it's a memoir. I do not rate memoirs because this is their story and this is something they want us to share, or want us to know that they have shared, because this is making them vulnerable. We're stepping into their lives and getting to know more about Harry and his family and his background, what has happened in the past, what is currently happening now in the present. So I do not rate books like this, but I really do suggest, like, even if you were on the edge about, or on the fence of if you wanted to read this book, I highly suggest that you do, because maybe you get a different perspective. Because when you read, a lot of people interpret different things and they have a different understanding. And I would love, if you have already read this book, or if you're going to read this book, definitely leave a comment down below on how you feel about it and how you feel about the family. I don't believe in the monarchy. I never will. They have caused so much, just a lot of things, a lot of trauma, family trauma, for generations. So I don't believe in the monarchy, and I don't think it should exist. I feel like for him, he can possibly be the key to have it restructured and stuff, but who knows? Time will only tell, and time will only tell from what we will see more from Prince Harry. But thank you all for watching this review. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. See ya.